Privyet, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is DB333 and welcome to Hearts of Iron 4 The New Order, Last Days of Europe as Omsk. In the last video, we began preparing for the Great Trial, beginning to enforce some discipline on the troops. We're putting some faith in DB333 Yazov, and we're trying our damnedest to prepare for the our inevitable decline and the falling of our leader, DB333 Yazov, or DB333 Karbyshev. I'm getting my Dimitri's mixed up. I apologize. Right at the end, we had some bandits raid us, and we're looking to try to find some way to avenge the men who have passed on. We'll see what happens there, I guess. Yeah. We're gonna go ahead and force some discipline and see what ends up happening. Okay, from here on, let's go ahead and watch the borders. One of the few things everyone in the League agrees on is that we are utterly surrounded by enemies. Karbyshev, the greatest threat, rules with an iron fist over Tumen and the surrounding territories, and it's no secret that, if given the chance, it would be more than happy to invade our small statelet. If Karbyshev thinks that we will not go without a fight, he is mistaken. Yazov will personally oversee the construction of several new lines of defenses along our border, as well as the repair of an old radar station. When Karbyshev comes, for one day he will come, we will be more than ready to crush him. Exactly. The report on the reforms was not good. Not good at all. Karbyshev ran his hands through what little hair he still had. Was this really what it had come to? Did he not even get junior officers to follow his orders anymore? Some cadres had refused to drill twice a day, whilst others drilled twice, but only for half as long as they normally would each time. His order that meals would be shortened seemed to have been ignored entirely. No one was being punished for their disobedience because the people responsible for carrying out the punishment were just as non-compliant as all the rest. He held back on ordering harsh treatment for so long because he wanted to believe the members would realize the error of their ways on their own. He now saw just how naive he had been. The League was further gone than he had dared imagine. Deep inside of himself, a small voice questioned if it was still worth the effort. He crushed that voice, as he had done so many times in the past. He made his choice years ago, when he created the League, and was too far along to start doubting himself now. The League had wandered off course, and he would spend whatever time he had left trying to get it back on track. His legacy depended on it. Russia depended on it. He could not abandon his nation, not when so many other people had tried. He believed, before all else, in Russia. One, indivisible, invincible. So long as he lived there, would be at least one member of the League who stayed true to its principles. They were all he had left. How can order be maintained without discipline? So we lose some stab, which our stab was not very good anyway. So, that's not nice. I think we'll keep raiding the Kazakh states, because that's not pretty easy to do. Whenever we get the opportunity, we'll raid probably these guys. Oh, there we go. We can go ahead and prepare. Move. Cadre 104924 moved silently through the forest towards the sounds of raucous laughter and roaring bonfires. A small encampment belonged to those raiders who had so brazenly attacked them only a few days ago. Now it was time for their just rewards. 5 full cadres of well-armed infantry made a quarter circle as they moved towards the clearing where the drunken bandits enjoyed the revelry. There was a click of bipods unfolding, the soft tick of safeties, and the crunch of soldiers lying prone with soft snow. Pick your targets. Wait for the signal. After what felt like ages, a squawk came over the radio. Open fire! The ill-conceived party became a hellscape within seconds. Tracers ripped through tents, horses, men, trees, everything in sight. Some were shot where they sat, drinking and yelling. Others had time to emerge, stumbling from their tents, only to be shot down in an orgy of violence. After a couple of minutes, continuous fire, the encampment was utterly ruined. A soft moaning sound flew into the night. It would not be heeded. The snow line of black-clad soldiers were there to check for survivors. They will not survive much longer. Keep some for interrogation. We must prevent future incidents. And my cat is fucking with my door. God damn it. Hold on. Let it get out. Thank you. Go ahead and put the weight in front of it. Man, that's a lot of snow. Damn. Ah, crap. Just cracked my back. That felt nice. Man. Go ahead and initiate the raid. See what we can do. Tribute paid. There we go. Beautiful. Easy as pie. Independent Labor Party. Interesting. You can watch the borders. Now let's go ahead. Let's try breaking the cliques. Blame for the league's current state is not wholly on the shoulders of the rank and file as much as the general wishes it was so. A broken roof does not destroy a house, but rotten foundations will. The source of so many woes plaguing the league may be traced back to one ever-present threat, the officers' cliques. Those meant to command the league into a new age have lost their way and fallen into the decadence that threatened the destruction of Russia during the last trial. Though he grows more and more weary by the day, General Karbyshev will continue his reforms. He will not allow all that he has done to be for nothing. The League must endure, but for that to happen, some sense must be restored to the officers. Perhaps now, he hopes, they will finally listen? So, we're going to want to go scavenge for loot. Probably do some new research facilities so we can look at, find new ways to kill Germans. Ever important to figure out, of course, as we all know. We're getting a lot more resources. Eventually. I like how this building has a -1 steel, apparently. That makes sense. If we ever take out Tumen, we'll get a nice bit of resources. US versus Guyana. Get some good oil here, too. Same here, actually. Yeah, good oil all about. A lot of steel into the toast, actually. That'll be great to pick up. Let's go ahead and get the Shield of the Motherland. We are the last hope of the Motherland in the end. Under the Tsar, the Russian workers labored endlessly as near slaves, while the man on top reaped the benefits, providing nothing in return. The Bolsheviks, too, failed the people. Under Bukharin's undisciplined gaze, our military stagnated. The Germans marched to annihilate us with near impunity. No more. From Omsk, a new order will sweep across the lands, one dedicated slowly to the protection and vengeance of Russia. And when we march forward to retake Moscow, their generals, their scientists, even the Führer himself will quake in their boots. When finally they beg us for mercy as our boots rest on their necks, only then will the last trial be avenged. Division defense and reinforcement rate, very nice. Gentlemen, please settle down. I've brought you here to discuss a very important matter today, and I need your attention. Karbyshev sat at the table, watching Sakharovsky and Valuktin shouting at each other, each accusing the other of corruption, treason, and a dozen other things. They had not been in the room for 5 minutes, and already things were getting out of hand. "Gentlemen, please stop arguing for one moment." Karbyshev managed to get a desperate shout over their bickering. Though doing so winded him, and he had to sit down. Reluctantly, both men quieted down and turned to him. "Does anyone know when Karkardin is going to arrive?" Karbyshev asked, gasping for breath after his outburst. "He isn't coming. He said he has important business and he'll request a briefing on whatever we discuss." "I told him this was important." "I know, Dmitri. I'm just telling you what he told me." "Very well. I'll have to catch him up to speed later. I need to talk to you all about the rampant factionalism I'm seeing in the League. Recently, there's been... Dmitri, I don't mean to interrupt, but before you continue, I must say something. The only one responsible for factionalism is the traitor sitting across from me." "I'm the traitor?" "Those are bold words coming from you. You think I don't know about your private security force?" The two men descended back into their incessant squabbling. Karbyshev sighed in despair and turned to look out the window at the snow-covered gardens. It was going to be a long day. There is no hope for them. Man. Way to complicate things, I guess. Shiza. Why am I speaking the Toyton tongue? That's fucking... I need to know more Russian curse words, I realize. I know kurva is a common Slavic insult. I know it's an insult in Polish, Slovakian, Czech too. But I'm not sure about Russian though. The white tablecloth hung limp like a shroud on a casket. The hot coagulated air seemed to stand still in the room, sending pricklings of discomfort across the skin of those there. Waiters scurried to cross the invisible line in the middle of the room, seemingly afraid of the psychic consequences of standing near such a powerfully charged fault line. On one side of the table, a menagerie of unimportant functionaries, Karbyshev among them, his face recalling some timeless monolithic statue. His dispassion said all that was needed. On the other, the old guard, stolid, intransigent, and unabashed. The background muffled by walls or gunshots. Glevkovarik, Abakumov intoned, with a bare minimum of effort. "I regret to interrupt his luncheon with such an uproar, but a plot was uncovered against the leadership of the League." He paused for effect, throwing a glance at the men sitting at the table. "It has been dealt with." Karbyshev, of course, knew all too well what was happening, and his heart sank. It was all over, and his plan... No. He had failed, but he would not go down quietly. Abakumov, or one of his cronies, was in the middle of gloating when a withered stare crossed the room, his words falling to the floor like a dead bird. 10 years now. Karbyshev almost whispered before raising his volume tenfold. 10 years now! You people I once called my comrades have betrayed my trust. And since then I've been nothing but window dressing for your continued victimization of our people. I've watched you send women and children to war armed with museum pieces. He paused, rising to the table and letting his chair fall to the floor. I see you for who you are now. You rats are just as venomous as Yazov and his vermin. Karbyshev spat with pure venom, animated by a terrible anger. I lost many things from the waste they fed us in the camps. Muscle, fat, teeth, but not my convictions. You animals never had any to begin with. Next, we're going to go ahead and go with a quiet war. Comrade Yazov has, in his most private moments with General Karbyshev, expressed doubts of a smooth transition of power after the general's death. The League's fractured state and the cliques of officers responsible, Yazov fears, may just be volatile enough to erupt into armed conflict if the situation isn't handled delicately. And so, General Karbyshev has given him leave to do as he seems fit to ensure peaceful succession. Comrade Yazov has already begun his efforts to grow his own power base and combat the schemes of his rivals, and yet more must be done. Comrade Yazov will train the Redemptionary Brigades for even the highest treasons, and he will engage in scheduled radio broadcasts of the League as a whole, earning their loyalty and respect. When the general meets his end, Comrade Yazov will be more than ready to continue his legacy. Or at least we can hope. The perpetual snow and hardness of Siberia stood little chance in the face of the invincible Russian spirit. Construction has begun on a series of bunkers below the city of Omsk that will protect native Russians from any fascist German invader or bomb. However, its main purpose will be to house our leadership and a sizable number of troops. The expansive complex will not only feature a primary bunker in the heart of Omsk, but metro systems fanning out all across the city. While some in the League complained at first of cost overruns and corruption, they no longer will. We have our sword. Now it's time to create our shield. German bombs cannot touch us now. Let's see. Nah, not gonna raid these guys. I dare say it's not worth it. Yeah, we'll wait for either of these guys really to get some loot. Speaking of which, loot. Loot. Scavenge for some more. Any word from Bakamov? Karbyshev asked, already knowing the answer. None, replied Kazan Magomedov, the young Tatar lieutenant who served as the old general's aide-de-camp, like he's still recovering from the tongue-lashing he gave him. Karbyshev chuckled. The young officer was technically Karbyshev's countryman in a way. Karbyshev himself was Tatar, albeit Siberian and Orthodox extraction. And Magomedov hailed from Tatarstan proper, but nationality wasn't why the Glavkovec insisted on this man serving as assistant for the past decade. Have you seen the doctor's report? Asked Karbyshev. Magomedov shook his head. The Glavkovec poured 2 glasses of vodka and motioned his aide over, gesturing to a chair next to his desk. Once Magomedov was seated with his drink, Karbyshev continued. Nothing you probably don't already know, or haven't heard on the grapevine. Doctors say I'm not long for this world. Kidneys are going out, plus half a dozen other things. Magomedov's face went white, not so much because he was unaware of this fact, as because responding to such a statement was not the easiest task. Karbyshev sensed this immediately and filled the void instead. I know, not the easiest line to follow up on. One way to put it, I suppose, replied Magomedov, gathering his wits. Have you figured out, final wishes and such? In the process of doing so, but I assure you, you can have anything from my office and quarters when I go. Both men laughed, and for a moment, the oncoming specter death didn't seem so immediate. A toast, then, to what time is left. Initiate the raid. You refuse tribute? Very well, then. The final speech. As the general surveys the results of his hard-fought reforms, he is forced with one bitter, inalienable truth. He has failed. As his health worsens more and more, the once proud founder of the League finds himself desperate. The League spirals towards disaster, and yet none save Comrade Yazov heeded his words. Though discouraged, the general has not lost all hope. He has called a general assembly of the League and will give one last impassioned speech, begging the men, women, and children that call Omsk home to look within and recognize the course of disaster the officers have put them on. Across the League's lanes, the general's voice will be broadcast. His last order: be ready for the trial ahead. Let's see. Yeah, we're whooping them. Raid successful. Beautiful. Treasure. Wonderful. We're saving up a lot of political power, which is important, don't get me wrong. Especially for our next region. We'll see what ends up being necessary, I guess. Alright, new industrial equipment. Karbyshev motion Magomedov over to a side table in his office, glancing around furtively before speaking up. Not in Russian, but in Tatar, his other native tongue. Listen, Kazan, the old general said with a grim seriousness in his voice. When I die, well, I have faith in Yazov. But if things go badly, go north and tell them Yelena sent you. Magomedov replied with a look of mild disbelief. My daughter, yes. Karbyshev responded, she's smarter than I am, truth be told. Got out when she still could. His eyes grew distant, as if imagining another time and what could have been. But I've got a thing for lost causes, I suppose. I stayed and this monstrosity was built up around me. Built on me. Dmitri, I think I've stumbled at a loss for words. I can't express my thanks, but... Dmitri, why me? You know, you're one of the only people who calls me that, just Dmitri. That's because you asked me to, sir. I ask everyone to do that. They don't. Even Yazov can't bring himself to. And it's part of why I care about what happens to you after I'm gone. See, when Yelena defected, I knew it was for the best. But that took away one of the last people who would sit down and talk to me as a human being. As a friend, and not just worship me or try to get favors. You're practically the only one left now. I sit up here in heaven and watch all these people come down before they'll file into church, as it were, and pay their respects. And then their little ceremonies end and they all go back to ignoring me and everything I stood for. I'm not a real person to them anymore. Just an image. A myth. The old man sat back in his chair. That's why I care. Because a pedestal is the loneliest place in the world. Karbyshev has retired as field marshal and Yazov gets promoted to field marshal. The final speech. And now it's time for falling snow. In the end, the monster General Karbyshev created has grown out of control. Even as the life fades from his body, the officers circle like vultures, ready to pounce and tear the League's bloated corpse limb from limb. The general sees the great trial approaching closer and closer by the day. And yet he knows now he will not be the one to face it. But perhaps there is one who can. General Karbyshev will thus perform one less act in the service of the motherland, knowing that Comrade Yazov, with his youthful drive and determination, will complete the general's mission. It's time to take a stroll. Comrades, countrymen, fellow members of the League, thank you for joining me today. It has been some time since I made a public address, but there are matters of vital importance that must be discussed, and I believe each and every one of you deserves to be involved in that discussion. I know in my heart that every member of the Black League believes in our mission, from myself to the rank-and-file members of the cadres. All of us want a strong, unified rank-and-file member of a Russian nation, and understand the Black League is the best organization to accomplish that goal. But in recent years, we've been consumed by distractions and division, and I fear we have strayed away from our objective. I have seen troubling signs of infighting and factionalism from my subordinates and from many officers of the League. Let me be clear that there is no room for factionalism within the Black League. If Russia is to be reclaimed from the darkness, we must work with a unity of purpose, united by our love for our motherland. I'm not troubled that I must remind everyone that your loyalty is not to your superiors, but the Black League itself. I've also uncovered extensive networks of corruption from high-ranking members of the League. I shall not identify names here, as I believe in offering a chance at redemption to all. But let me be clear that if corruption continues, there shall be consequences for us all. If any of you believe that you know of any corrupt or unpatriotic behavior, I would urge you to report of a suspect and make sure that justice is done. The greatest betrayal a League member can commit is placing their own needs above those of the Russian people. I had hoped these matters could be solved internally, but I have realized they are too widespread to not be discussed in public. I hope that by addressing you, the patriots who make up the foundation of the League, we might be able to finally put an end to factionalism and corruption, and restore the League we all believe in to its original purpose. Thank you all, and good night. But does anyone listen? I'm really surprised about the writing. This is pretty damn good, I gotta say. Improved infantry rifles, beautiful. It's time for the new generation to be implemented. Looks like we're saving a bit more on steel, I want to say. Shoot, what do we want to work on? Let's do industry. That's a pretty big one we should probably get working on. Huh. It was a front. Near the whole foreign ministry was a front. Yes, there were state meetings, lowly assemblies, with a few low-ranking diplomats from the bordering warlords. That was it, though. What was not a front, however, was Alexander Sakharovsky and his gang of plotters. Every night after conducting their normal business, they would retreat to room 4 on hall 5 on the 3rd floor for the war ministry. Usually they would leave early in the coming out in the hours of the morning. Sometimes they remained there until dawn, coming out with heavy coats and looking more tired than anyone. Now, to most outsiders who have never heard of the theory of terror, it seemed like some crackbox science. Something invented by a New England liberal arts professor who had a little too much coffee and read a little too much Jean-Paul Marat and Hebert. On closer inspection, it began to seem more exact. Sakharovsky had stumbled upon what he believed was to be the purest form of justice: terror. After all, was it not Robespierre that wrote that terror is the only justice, prompt, severe, and flexible? Was terror not the most effective means of moving men to do unimaginable things? To make them recoil at a mouse? To make them get in line with a murderous totalitarian government? If Sakharovsky could master the art of wielding terror, he could master the world. So Sakharovsky toiled away in room 4 on hall 5 on the 3rd floor, surrounded by books and writing late into the night. When time for the great trial came, terror would be on their side. And now let the snow fall. It was over. All the old marshal's schemes had failed. Once he had fancied himself the pilot of the great ship that was his beloved league. Perhaps this had even once been true. But in the way that only human beings could, Dmitry Mikhailovich Karbyshev had deluded himself, thinking himself to be sailing Russia to a new dawn, when he was little more than a wooden figure carved on her prow. All the papers strewn across his desk were little more than butterflies without wings. Perhaps a walk outside would clear things up. It wasn't like there was any option left. The old marshal left his office, passing through multiple security checkpoints on his way out, catching more than a few surprised glances. Yet at the same time, he felt indivisible. The only person who even asked his business was Magomedov, slumped half awake behind a security desk. As a cold nighttime wind whipped against Karbyshev's old frame, he felt a strange sense of peace. Certainly it was one tinge with sorrow. Sorrow that he had not done enough, that he could not do more. Yet the hot, heavy anguish that had racked him for the past 5 years was gone. Looking up at the snowy night sky, watching the snowflakes emerging from the darkness, the old general felt as if he had done his part. What would be, would be. Letting the faintest hint of a smile creep across his wrinkled face, he waved to the sentries of the guard horses as he walked out of the main gate of a command compound and strode into a copse of trees towards the riverbank. Half frozen by the early Siberian winter, the little creek babbled softly at the general's feet, lapping up against the icy ground. His boots quivered on the slick rocks of the riverbank. He didn't struggle when the cold waters claimed him. The next morning, the internal security men would ask Magomedov 1,000 times over what it was Karbyshev had said to him before leaving. "I'm going outside, and maybe some time." The Ultranationalist Party will now be called the Black League. The Fascism Party will now be called the Black League. Change of popularity despotism by 40%. Karbyshev is dead. We lose 100 political power. Dmitry Yazov becomes the leader for the Ultranationalist, and we replace a puppet all but name with new leadership, which gives us some better benefits. I'll take that. And here we are. Dmitry Yazov. Dmitry Timofeyevich Yazov is part of a new generation of post-Soviet leaders, those born after the rise of Lenin, with no memories of the Tsar or the Great War. They knew hardship as children, but were told this hardship was a necessary sacrifice for the motherland's survival. When the Nazis came swarming from the west, they fought on the front lines under this Red Army, witnessing hell on earth and suffering bitter defeat again and again. When the Great Patriotic War was over, what little happiness they had in their former lives was taken from them by the victorious Germans. The West Russian Revolutionary Front's military failures and subsequent collapse in the 50s only made men like Yazov more set in their ways. The old Soviet commanders had fervor, but leadership desperately needed some fresh blood. Younger men, harder men, those who were taught from birth about the value of sacrifice and have witnessed it firsthand. With Comrade Karbyshev having passed before his vision was complete, the burden now falls to his protege Dmitry Yazov to carry it out. Unlike the former mentor, Yazov has both the will and the stamina to implement it. He's already transforming the entire nation to be ready for a form of total war, more destructive than any the world has ever seen. He expects his people to sacrifice everything they have, including their lives, to help achieve revenge against the German menace, and many of them will gladly do so. Nothing, not even the threat of atomic fire, will be enough to deter him from his course, and he frequently boasts that if all Germans and all but one Russian perish in the coming war, it will still be a victory. Omsk is stirring from its slumber, and the world trembles at the thought. It had been a few days since Comrade Karbyshev took his walk to the woods, and he did not return. Yet today Yazov took his usual seat next to the old man's side, waiting for his return. Today, too, the fields were noisy with men training for the trial. The two cups sat in the cold, their steam streaming into the air in smooth wisps. Before dissipating, he leaned back into his chair, growing sleepy, as worry and concern faded from the creases of his face. Comrade Karbyshev was not so weak that a chilly wind could kill him. He would return and lead the League to glory. He squinted. Now was not the moment to grow complacent. What would the man think of him if he found Yazov dozing off before their appointed meeting? Yazov sat up, his elbows on his knees, tapping his fingers as the hours passed and the days stretched to the evening. The cold breeze blew between the trees, and the training field grew silent as men trooped to dinner and other martial business. The stern clouds looked to the earth and seemed to grow grayer and grayer in disappointment or wrath. Still, Karbyshev did not appear. He was old, however, and maybe his creaky joints made him late. Yazov laughed, but it was hollow. Aides and officers came out of the offices, begging him to return to his quarters. A storm grew in the distance, and the clouds grew stark, stealing an outlook. The sun went down, and snow fell. First in a gentle dusting, then in a thick, heavy blanket. I looked outside because it's snowing, and it's kind of appropriate. Excuse me. Where was I? The cold breeze became a frigid gale. The cool breeze became lashes of frozen air. Still, Yazov sat, waiting, his fingers clasped together, breathing with every shiver and shock. An aide, braving through the harsh winter, came beside him. Yazov was still. Sir, it might be time to rest. He will sadden Comrade Karbyshev deeply if he returns. Yazov stood, gathering all of his strength to speak amid all the din of a storm. Yazov spoke in a weak and broken voice. Yes. I will rest now. Thank you, comrade. The only ward Comrade Karbyshev cannot keep. The rain poured upon the silent streets of Omsk as a procession marched through the streets, the drumming rain upon gravel and boot, upon stone drowning out all life. In the center of a column of wordless soldiers, a simple wooden coffin rested upon the hands of a chosen few. As they marched through the city, a flash of light momentarily lit the stony faces of those marching before a crushing boom of thunder echoed overhead. At the thought of the column, arms aching, bearing the weight of the left side of a coffin upon his shoulders, marched Dmitri Yazov. He was grateful for the night and for the rain, for it would let none see the tears as they flowed freely down his cheeks. He was still garbed in the uniform of General Karbyshev's closest follower. Not a leader, just a follower. As the procession passed apartment block after apartment block, the residents, garbed in their own uniforms, filed orderly out of their homes and joined the procession. Not a word was spoken among the men and women of the Black League as they marched their great general's body through their streets. They marched for what seemed like hours, out of the city proper and past the training fields, and all along the way more and more people joined the march. For one night they would put their differences aside. For one night the entire Black League stood united in mourning. Eventually they reached their destination. The highest hill in the land the League controlled, a suitable final resting place for the man that had given so much for them. Yazov exhaled deeply as he knelt, while the others, carrying his coffin, lowering it oh so gently into the tomb. A single cloaked sob left his throat before he stood, gazing at the assembled Black League before him. A small podium had arranged just behind the grave. He walked unsteadily, then confidently, then with utter calm to the podium. He looked down at his people below. The Black League watched him with complete attention, each man and woman standing rapt and alert. In his heart of hearts, Yazov knew that it was not over. He turned on the microphone and began to speak. Soldiers, workers, comrades, lend your general your ears. And so here we are. All hail, Comrade Yazov. Oh, we have to seize control of the capital. That's gonna complicate things. Okay. Let me take a look at all this. General Karbyshev, the hero of Russia, founder of the Black League, and mentor of Dmitri Yazov, has died. In his place, General Yazov rises like a phoenix, ready to avenge his teacher's manipulation by the officer clique plaguing the League, and above all, ready to battle the Hun one last time. While those who caused the League's very rot bemoan the general's succession and decry his influence, plotting in the shadows, they forgot one thing. General Yazov is not his forefather. These worms will be exposed for the scum that they are, and crushed under his boot. There can be no other outcome. There we are. The closest thing to a father Dmitry Yazov had ever known was dead. As a plain, unmarked casket was dropped unceremoniously into the ground, rain cascading around it. The supposed honor guard lazily shoveled clumps of mud into the grave. Yazov's gaze fell to his clenched, shaking fist. It took all he had to restrain himself. He had hoped, foolishly he knew now, that with his ascension as general, he would finally be able to make some change. Perhaps the rot within the League's officers would dissipate with the promotion of a fresh young face. Obviously, Yazov reflected bitterly. He was wrong for the most part, anyway. A precious few had slowly but surely become subservient to him, which granted Yazov an advantage he refused to relinquish. He strode away from the funeral, boots splashing against the mud. There was much work to be done. Much work indeed. Sekarovsky. Which one is that? Abakumov. He actually isn't too bad, so that kind of sucks. What are you going to do? Gentlemen, I'm honored by your presence and your willingness to listen to me. Of course, Yazov was perfectly aware that many of the men in the room would prefer to see him shot than listen to someone they regard as an upstart firebrand. Yet he carried on. As a new Glavkoverk of the Black League, I would like to make clear how I intend to exercise my new role. In the last days of our dearly departed comrade Karbyshev, there was no respect for authority among the higher ranks of our organization. Our founder, a living example of the principles we all seek to emulate, was ignored and regarded as little more than a figurehead. His wise counsel was spurned, and our mission corrupted by bureaucratic cliques. He could see the discontent evident among some of the men seated before him, but he continued on. While I have no intention to punish those responsible for the system, I certainly do not intend to let it continue. Yazov glanced to the side, as Sakarovsky and others he had brought with him. I have, at my side, a staff of eminently capable officers and generals. With their help, as well as, I hope, yours, I intend to make this organization into something of which our dear Dmitry Mikhailovich would be proud of. Yazov had long imagined this moment and the satisfaction it might bring. The heady rush of making a fateful decision manifest with carefully chosen words. But no such feeling came, and as Yazov met Abukumov's hateful, beady eyes stared. A sickening, head-spinning realization washed over him. There was no turning back now. The Rubicon had been crossed, and this was war. Iacta alea est. With the tragic passing of General Karbyshev, Dmitry Timofeyevich Yazov, our Glavkoverk, and a loyal follower of our late general, is now in full command of the Black League. Where the general failed, he will succeed. He is younger and sees the true state of Omsk. Some lesser officers believe the League is an invincible, omnipotent entity ready to restore Russia. Yazov is not nearly as short-sighted. He sees a rotten organization that's been corrupted from the inside by opportunists and recreants. He sees the policies that need to be implemented and countless procedures that must be reformed, boots that must be laced up and belts that must be tightened before the League will be in any shape to take on our immediate enemies, let alone the rest of Russia or Germany itself. Luckily, Glavkovic, as a man of ambition, has already laid out a slate of reforms that will correct the League's course and transform it into a proper polity. We'll go ahead, train some new recruits, and silence dissidents. So we still have to end the capital, secure the capital, it seems. Are you really sure about this, sir? Yazov glared at the young officer, holding the new memo he had just finished typing. The young man seemed to shrink away from his gaze, clutching the paper in front of him like a pathetic shield. Did I stutter, Lieutenant? No, of course not, sir. It's just that, well, this seems exceptionally harsh to me. Dozens of executions, hundreds of arrests. Some of these people are not the most senior members of the League. Can we really afford to get rid of them? Every traitor on that list is a coward and a thief, and most of them are traitors, too. The Black League has no place for them anymore. We must show the members of the League what happens to those who obstruct our progress. Now, I would encourage you to deliver that memo as fast as you possibly can if you don't want to be considered an obstructionist yourself. The lieutenant opened his mouth to reply, then thought better of it, snapped a quick salute, and almost sprinted out the door. It brought Yazov a small amount of satisfaction to see the fear in the man's eyes. Respect was all well and good, but fear was the best way to ensure obedience. Karbyshev had been a wise man, but he had failed to realize that. He had placed his trust in people who had exploited and abused him. Yazov was not so forgiving, as those scum were about to find out. Before Russia can be redeemed, the Black League must be. And I think that is where we're going to have to get it here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you as always for watching. If you like this video, leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you want to see more of this content feature, hit the subscribe button for more uploads every weekday, as well as occasionally Saturdays. If you have any comments, feedback, concerns, leave in the comment section below. I read the comments I get and appreciate any feedback you might have for me. If you want to chat, play games, any of that fun stuff, I have a Patreon, Discord down link below. If you want to send me bucks every month, I have a Patreon. If you want to see me do sort of live, I have a Twitch, all of which are down in the description box below. Thank you as always for watching. My name has been DB333, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.